Sure.
So this is how I see it, and it'll better explain it the way I see it.
Hmm.
So if she was pregnant alone without the man there, it's 100% her choice. If it was 50-50 in a marriage, if it was in a marriage, it's 50-50. That's how I see it.
So, are you talking like a situation where like the father left her, or like a
Yes.
yeah, okay, yeah, Chewy, go ahead and take it.
Okay. So Grizzly, you're saying that you're pro-choice. So let's start a little bit more broadly and see if we can work inward towards your argument that you placed for whether or not a woman should be allowed to have an abortion if she's single or if she's married, right?
Yes.
So do you agree with the scientific consensus that life begins at conception?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have a cutoff point at any point during the pregnancy when a woman should no longer be allowed to have an abortion?
No.
No. So she should be allowed to have an abortion all 9 months.
Yes.
Okay. And so your stipulation, I want to ask this. It does seem like your argument is very broad, very much saying that it doesn't matter what the circumstance is, that she should be allowed to have an abortion.
Yes.
So if you have let me see if I can word this correctly, right? So why let me just start from the beginning. Why do you think women should be allowed to have abortions?
Because it's her body, her choice.
Okay, so you're arguing bodily autonomy?
Yes. If
Okay.
she wants to do it, she's able to do it. My only thing is, when it comes to marriage, the only thing that is, to me, is it's a marriage thing. It comes down to 50-50. The only thing I can see it as that I would give into is that if she feels it is a unaliving effect, if it's going to be an unaliving effect to her life, then I will give in.
So I'm kind of curious. Why does the woman lose her right to bodily autonomy when she's married?
What do you mean?
Why does she lose her bodily autonomy when she's married? You said that if she's single, then she can choose whenever she wants. But if she's married, it's a 50-50 thing, meaning that the man has to have a say as well. So
To a
I guess
point, the
two
man has
questions.
to a point. In my to a point, if it is a unaliving to where her body can't sustain the pregnancy and she has to have it, then
Okay,
yes.
Grizzly, real quick. So let's, for the sake of the conversation, right? Let's say I grant you the grape, Inchmest, life of the mother situations, right? Let's say I
Yes.
grant you all of those. It is permissible for a woman to have an abortion in that scenario, right?
Yes.
So let's move away from that. Do you think women should be allowed to have abortions for the 98% of reasons that they do? For instance, like lack of money, they're single, they want to further either their education or their career, right? These are the
Yes.
predominant reasons. So you support
Yes.
those as well.
Yeah.
So I would ask you, why should she be allowed to, or so this goes back to the bodily autonomy argument, right?
Yeah.
Why does her bodily autonomy cease to matter when she's married? Because if she's married, right, you're saying that she does not have full control over her body or what's inside of her body, right? She doesn't have that 100% say anymore. If anything, it's 50%, because like you said
Because she
previously,
made a
it's a
commitment.
50-50 scenario.
Because she made a commitment to It because she made, to me, this is just me, because she made a commitment
Commitment to what or who?
to me. She made a commitment to me in a
Okay.
sense.
Why does her commitment to be married to you mean that you now have 50% control over her body?
That's just how I see it.
But I know that's why you see it. I'm asking you is why.
I don't know. That's just, I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why. That's just how I see it. I could not tell you why.
Okay.
That's just how I see it.
Well,
I cannot give you a reason why.
I appreciate the honesty on that. I would just say that these two arguments contradict each other wildly.
Can you
Right?
give me a reason why they contradict each other?
Yeah, I can do that for you. So, for instance, right, if you're saying that a single woman has full bodily autonomy, she has the
Yes.
right to have an abortion whenever she wants in the pregnancy, all the way up until birth. But she loses that right the moment she puts a ring on and signs a piece of paper.
Yes.
Right, which is a ring isn't even required. The moment she signs a piece of paper saying that she is in a legal marriage with another person, she now loses that right. So either she has bodily autonomy or she has extremely limited bodily autonomy.
I see what you're saying now, and I get what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying. And you're actually right. She does, and I kind of retract my statement now, and you're kind of right. I'm kind of being hypocritical, because now that you put it that way, I am being hypocritical by doing that.
So which part of the which part of your previous statement would you like to retract? Would you like to retract the
50-50?
It's her body, her choice? So you want to retract the 50-50?
Yes.
Okay, so it is no longer 50-50. It is all her choice, no matter whether she's married or
Yes.
not. Okay, so, and you do not believe that there should be any legal cutoff point to when a woman is allowed to have an abortion?
Yes.
So all 9 months?
All 9 months.
Okay, so I want to ask you, at what point would you say that the pregnancy, or wait, do you believe that the woman should be allowed to have an abortion at any point during the pregnancy?
No, not at all.
At what point would you say that she's no longer allowed to have an abortion?
When the baby comes out.
Okay, when the baby comes out. So that's why I'm asking. So at pregnancy, and I'll just say it, right? So pregnancy does not end until the umbilical cord is cut.
Yes, when the umbilical cord is cut, you cannot have an abortion.
Real quick. So pregnancy does not end until not only the umbilical cord is cut, but also the placenta has been delivered as well.
Okay.
That is, once the placenta is delivered, that is the end or the termination of the pregnancy.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So
that's where I see abortion should end.
Okay. So the moment that the umbilical cord is cut, that is when you're saying that a woman should no longer have that right? Okay, so let's say you have a woman who goes into the doctor, she's pregnant, she's in labor, she's in labor for, let's say, 12 hours, right? And she gives birth to this child. The child is out of her, but it is still attached via umbilical cord, right? The child has not been separated from the umbilical cord. Should she be allowed to kill that child?
That's a tough question. See, yeah.
It shouldn't be. If you're gonna hold true to your previous claims, then it should not be very difficult at all to answer.
Yeah, the child is out of her. You're right. You're right. I should be able to hold true.
But it's just because it's out of her body doesn't mean that the umbilical cord is cut.
Yeah.
So since the umbilical cord has not been cut, should she be allowed to terminate the life of this child? Even though the baby's body is physically outside of her body, but they are attached to the umbilical cord.
Yeah, see that See that? Yeah.
Can I jump in? I would love to introduce myself.
No,
No,
you
please,
shut
Okay,
up.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I will. Thank you.
See, that's tough. See, you got me there, because that's tough, because because when you explained that the autonomy of it, where when you explained it that way, it doesn't end until the umbilical cord is cut, and the other part there.
So in this, like, I guess I'll just re-answer or re-ask the question, right? Well, you know the question,
Yeah,
right?
I understand where you're coming from, and now that you explained it, it kind of makes sense, and I see where you're coming from, and I can see why a lot of people have, and I can see why a lot of people talk about this, because, and a lot of people are anti-abortion in some way.
Okay, well, so it sounds to me like you're having a hard time wrapping your thoughts around this hypothetical, right? Is there a part of you, or even a majority of you, that's saying no, you shouldn't be able to kill that child?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so if the child is not, let's just assume for argument's sake that you would say no, she shouldn't be allowed to do that, right?
Yeah.
She should be legally disallowed. I'll just use that, right?
Yeah.
Legally, she is not permitted to terminate the life of that child after it is outside of her body, right?
Yeah.
Because we're talking my body, my choice.
Yeah.
Child's not in her body, even though it may be attached to her body, but is no longer inside of her body.
Yeah.
But what if she was in the middle of labor, right?
Yeah.
Her water breaks. She's going into labor. She hasn't begun, or this child has begun to be has started to be delivered, right?
Yeah.
This child's half of this child's body is still inside of her body.
Yeah.
Should she be allowed to kill it then?
No.
Okay. And so let's rewind it and let's start the hypothetical over again, right? If the child was being delivered, but only the head of the child was poking out, should she be allowed to kill that child?
No.
Okay. So, rewind one more time. The woman is in labor, but she has not begun to crown. The child has not begun to be exiting the body. Should she be allowed to kill that child?
Yes.
Even though she is in labor?
I would say before she goes into labor.
But real quick, the hypothetical is that she's already in labor.
Yes. Hypothetically, before she goes into labor, I would say...
No. Before we even go back that far, we don't even need to go that far to have a conversation, right? So the child has not begun to crown, but she's in the middle of labor. Should she be allowed to terminate that child's life?
No.
Okay. So in all of the scenarios that I have given the child is still attached to her.
Yes.
The child is still attached to her, still drawing nutrients from her. And outside of the very first hypothetical that I gave, all of the children are still inside of her body.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you willing to tell her what she can and cannot do with her body?
Fuck me. You got me. Wow. Wow, baby, you're good.
I'm not that good. I can promise you there are other people out there that are way better at debating this than I am. Right? But
wow, you just smoked my ass.
And here's the thing too. I can go all the way further back. And I can ask you this question, right? So why is it wrong for her to kill the child while she is delivering, but it is not wrong for her to kill the child before she goes into labor?
That would have killed it when you even asked the question.
Yeah. But like, let's say we can move the conversation to move the conversation along, right? So what is the difference between the child that is currently being delivered versus the child that maybe has a week until the mother's due date? What is the difference between these two children?
There isn't.
Okay. So do you still hold by the argument of my body, my choice?
Now that you put it that way, no.
Okay. So let's try to reevaluate what your argument truly is, right? So bodily autonomy doesn't really have anything to do with what you're talking about. So I guess I will re-ask the question. What is the difference between the child that is being delivered versus the child that is not being delivered inside of the womb?
There is no difference, like you just said.
There's no difference?
Because the child is still there.
Got you. Okay. So let's move this further back, right? Let's say you have a woman who is, let's say, 24 weeks along, right?
Yeah.
So in the United States, the vast majority of states have an abortion cutoff of around 22 to 24 weeks.
Yeah.
This is what's typically called viability.
Now, what's viability?
Viability.
Like liability? Is it kind of like liability?
No. So viability is typically the concept that the child can survive outside of the womb without the mother's body. Right? This is what's typically referred to as viability.
Okay.
So what is the difference between that child that's being delivered and the child at 24 weeks of gestation?
Nothing.
Okay. Like nothing at all? Like not even development?
Well, development, because it's growing inside the mother.
I'm gonna say I have to.
One sec. This is a 1v1 conversation.
She came up before, and I warned her before, and I gave her a second chance. She's in the queue again. Don't let her up.
Got you. So, I guess what I'm trying to ask you, Grizzly, is like the development stage difference between a child that's being born, right? Let's say the child went full gestational period, which is 9 months, versus the child that's at 24 weeks. The child at 24 weeks is not nearly as developed as the child at, let's say, the due date.
Yeah. Which
right?
is understandable.
And so would you still say that this is not a justification for having an abortion? Or do you think a woman should still be allowed to have that abortion?
Well, the way you're putting it, I would say that they shouldn't be allowed to have an abortion then.
They shouldn't?
No, they shouldn't be allowed to have an abortion.
Okay, and where would you draw that line for when a woman should be allowed to have an abortion? If it's not all 9 months...
You've changed my mind completely.
Okay. I want
Stop asking questions and just move on to the next person.
Okay, Grizzly, my intentions weren't to like ramrod this down your throat. I just wanted to see if you, like, what your stance truly was.
What the fuck, baby?
I know. I'm glad that I've changed your mind on that. I very much am. So
I never.
I guess since I've given you, or since we've walked
Adam
through
Apple says, "Shut up and take the win."
Well, I'll just put it this way, right? So, I'm an anti-abortionist. I do not think that there is a morally justifiable reason to have an abortion ever. Right? This is my stance. Right? I believe that at no point from conception, not until 9 months later. That is my stance. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I guess I'll end it by this is a customary question that we ask individuals who come up on the panel and maybe change their mind, right?
Yeah. Well, you changed mine because that you basically just changed my whole moral on abortion.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I really am. And I'll just ask this this is the last question I'll ask you, I swear. Right? Last question. This is a
you can ask me anything. Dude, you're good because I am an open-minded person. So anything, I'm open to learn anything. So you're good to ask.
So this is typically the last question that we ask. It's customary for us to ask people who have changed their minds, right? Everybody on the panel usually asks this question. So let's say hypothetically you're the king of the United States, right?
Don't tell me you're getting into Trump.
No. I'm not bringing up politics. I'm not bringing up specific politicians. But if you were the king of the United States and what you said goes, right? And somebody were to place a bill in front of you that said, if we're going to allow abortions for grape, incest, life of the mother is being threatened, right? These are all horrible situations, right? We will allow these, but we are going to ban the other 98% of abortions. Would you sign that bill?
Say that again.
Okay, so if you were to start over, I guess you're the king of the United States. What you say goes. You sign something; it is now law, right? And somebody puts a bill in front of you that says we are going to ban all abortions except for the ones needed for grape, incest, and the life of the mother, right? Would you sign that bill?
Oh boy. No.
You wouldn't sign that bill. So why
hang on. No, hang on.
Okay.
Grape.
Did you explain to him specifically what the 98% entails?
No, I can do that for you. So, actually, I think I did. I explained the 98%, right? So 98% is like the mother is broke. She wants to go to school. She wants to continue to go to work, right?
So explain. So you said that grape, incest, and
so you know what grape is, right?
Yes.
So, do you understand incest?
Yes, I understand that. And what was the other one? And the third one?
The life of the mother is being threatened, meaning that if she were to continue the pregnancy, she will die. Right? And the only way for her to survive is to have a lethal abortion.
Yeah.
Right? So those are typically the big three exceptions that people have. And so I'm asking you, if those three abortions were allowed to continue, would you ban the elective, unnecessary 98% of abortions? Does that make more sense?
No, I would not ban the 98. Juno, really?
Yeah, we get that all the time.
Quite.
No, I would not ban the other 98% of them.
So I would ask you, why not?
Well, wait a minute. Because this is a tough question because you're asking me, I would just veto it. And I would veto the bill and say, no, I'm not signing this at all.
Okay. So I'm asking you, why would you do that?
Because I'm anti-abortion.
Oh, you're anti. So let me ask you. So just for clarification, an anti-abortionist is like, for instance, I'm an anti-abortionist.
Yes, I'm you.
Any exceptions?
Any exceptions?
Well, except for, let me explain this, Grizzly. Except for, we would give if it was absolutely necessary to save the mother's life. It would be a self-defense principle, but in reality, that doesn't really happen.
Yes. So, like, the whole self-defense scenario, virtually non-existent. Does not exist, right? But if it were to exist, we would allow.
Is that why you brought up the
not exist, right? But if it were to exist, we would allow.
Is that why you brought up the bill with the mother's life?
Yes.
That's why you made it so tricky. That's why I was like, see, I couldn't figure out why you brought up the mother's life because I was like, that makes no sense.
Gotcha.
So I was like, I'm just gonna veto that. Okay. You gotta rethink that.
Well, so typically I ask this question. The reason why we ask this question is because most, like, pro-lifers in general typically give the argument that abortions are not necessary for 98% of the time. Right?
Yeah.
If you're just pro-life with exceptions.
Yeah, so veto that bill and get that bill out of here.
Okay, so then let me ask you another question, right? Same concept. Yeah. You're the king of the United States, and I were to place a bill in front of you that said all abortions are now banned. Would you sign that bill?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so welcome to the brotherhood.
Yeah, that's awesome, Grizzly.
I'm going to tell you right now, Grizzly, you are the first person I have ever sat and talked to that went from pro-choice, like strong pro-choice views, to the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Grizzly, do you have a Discord?
Yes, but I don't. I actually just ended it the other day.
Well, if you get it again, if you go to my bio, there's a link for a Discord server that's all pro-lifers. You can ask questions in there, talk to some different people.
Yeah, okay. Get different perspectives on what we view.
All right. No, I'm completely open-minded, so any questions you guys have, you guys are more than welcome. I'm more than welcome to answer. So that's why I put it the way I put it. It makes it easier for people to understand the way I saw it.
Mm-hmm. Got you. Well, you know. Oh,
sorry, Julie. I was just gonna say, Grizzly. Even if you don't join that Discord server, I'm live pretty much every night. If you have any questions, like, feel free to either ask in the comments or come up and ask a quick question. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Give everybody on the panel a follow. Kenna, Tone Lock, and Silver. I can tell you absolutely they're better at debating certain topics than I am. So if you have any like hard questions that I'm not able to ask or answer,
yeah,
talk to any of them because they could easily answer questions for you.
Yeah,
brother.
and we're all connected to people too. So like, even if we don't know the answer ourselves, give us a day, and we can probably get it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Chewy, you like completely changed my mind on abortion.
Well, that's literally the only reason why I do this.
Like, I'd never had a one-on-one debate with somebody and had somebody. Well, I have, but like, this is you're probably were impressed that I changed my mind.
And I can easily admit that it's very, very seldom that we not only do we have an individual who is willing and able to open their minds and listen and have a logical and like rational conversation about this topic, but not only that, but is able to completely 180. That would be like if I were to put this in politics perspective, right? That's like going from like being a far left communist to like a far right extremist, right? Because the anti-abortion stance is an extreme stance. It is also the moral stance.
Yeah.
Right? Extreme doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. It requires context.
Yeah.
So, Grizzly, thank you so much for coming up and having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it, right? And we're going to drop you down.
Yeah.
So that way we can hopefully get some more some other pro-choicers, right? Hopefully we can convert them too.
Okay.
Alrighty, brother. You have a fantastic night. Thank you for talking with me.